Hello and welcome to Uncle Maths Online Academy. Today we have mathematics and we are going to continue with our discussion on quadratic equation. In the previous class, we talked about how to solve quadratic equations using the factorization method, and in another class we talked about how to solve quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. In today's class, we are going to talk about how to solve quadratic equation using completing the square methods. Completing the square method. Now the steps involved in using this method are these. Number one, you compare the equation given to you with the standard equation for quadratic equation. Compare with ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. This is the standard equation for quadratic equations. The essence of doing this is to make sure that the equation given to you is a quadratic equation. In the first place, you have to make sure that the equation given to you is a quadratic equation before you start solving, because if you are using this method to solve another equation that is not a quadratic equation, you may not get the answer. Now, in comparing it, you make sure that the highest power of x is 2. If the highest power in the equation is not 2, it is not a quadratic equation. Then the next thing you have to do is to make sure that the value of x is not equal to 0. In a quadratic equation, x must not be equal to 0. So when you are done with this comparison, then the next step to take, step 2, if you are using this completing the square method, the step 2 to take is to make sure that the value of a is 1. The value of a is 1. That is, make sure that the coefficient of a is 1. The coefficient of x squared is 1. The coefficient of x squared in this equation is a. So in step 2, make sure that a is 1. If the value of a is not 1, divide everything by the value of a given to you. For instance, if you have the value of a as 2, maybe you have 2x squared, then divide the whole thing with 2. That means you are going to have 2x squared divided by 2. Then you come to bx. Anything you have as bx, divide it by 2. Anything you have as c, divide it by 2. That is step 2. Step 2, ensure that a is equal to 1. If a is not equal to 1, divide through by a. Divide through by a. To divide through means to divide everything, all the values given to you in the equation, divide everything by the value of a. If you divide by a, it will clear the value of a here and make it 1. For instance, if this is 2x squared and you are now dividing by 2, it becomes 2x squared divided by 2. Then the 2 will cancel 2, leaving only x squared. Then in this case now, you have made s squared, the coefficient of s squared, 1. That is the essence of doing this. That is step 2. Now step 3. Step 3, take the value of c to the right hand side. Whatever is given to us as the value of c, assuming we have 4 as c, move it to the right hand side, so that what we are going to have is the values that have x at the left hand side is values that have x at the left hand side, and any value that does not have x, you move it to the right hand side. That is step 3. Take x, take c, take c to the right hand side. Take c to the right hand side, r right hand side. That is step 3. Now, when you have taken the value of c to the right hand side, the next step, step 4, the next thing to do is to go back, look for the value of b and divide it by 2. The next step, look for the value of b. Here, any value attached to this x is the value of b. Now get the value of b. Assuming we have ax, assuming we have 2x squared plus 3x plus another thing as c, then this value, which is 3x, as b. If you have 3x, it means that the value of b is 3. If you have 4x, it means that the value of b is 4. If you have 5x, it means that the value of b is 5. So take whatever is the value of b and divide it by 2. In step 4, divide b by 2 and square it, and square it. So assuming we have the value of b as 3, then we divide it by 2 and then square everything. Assuming we have the value of b as 4, we divide it by 2, getting 2, and then we square it. Assuming we have the value of b as 5, we divide it by 2, 5 over 2, and then find the square of it. That is step 4. Then step 5. Step 5, what we do in step 5 is that the squared value of b, we add it to the left hand side and to the right hand side. That is, add it to both sides. So this value that we have squared when we divide the value of b, we add it to the left hand side and add it to the right hand side. If we add it to the left hand side, we remove the original value that contains b. For instance, okay, add the squared value of b to both sides. Now then remove the original value that has b. Now what I mean by this is this. Let's go back to the original equation. Now this is the original equation. We remove this bx, remove it entirely, and then that is for the left hand side. You know that we have moved c to the right hand side. Now at the left hand side, we remove this original value of b and add the squared value of b. So assuming that our squared value of b is 3 over 2 squared, we remove the original value that is here and use this 3 over 2 square to replace it. That is what we mean by this. So whatever is here originally, remove it and use the value of b squared, b over 2 squared to replace it. Why we are doing this is because we got that squared value of b from this value. So there's no need of adding two of them again because we simplified it to get the b squared. So remove it and use the b squared to replace the original value of bx. Now when we do that, we are now going to have whatever we have in step 6. Step 6, what we are going to do in step 6 is that we find the factor, we factorize the left hand side. So factorize the left hand side. Now what I mean by this is this: when we add the squared of b to both sides, that is to the left and to the right, then we factorize the values that we now have at the left hand side. So assuming that we have now x squared plus 3 over 2 squared. Now we can factorize it and make it to be in the form of there's square here, there's square here. So we can take a common bracket for two of them and factorize it to look like this: x plus 3 over 2. Then we take their common power. So we have x plus 3 over 2 squared. So we make it to look in this form. Now, having it in this form, the next step is for us to find the square root of both sides. Find the square roots of both sides. Step 7. Find the square roots. Find the square roots of both sides. Find the square root of both sides. Now, assuming we have x squared plus 3 over 2 x plus 3 over 2 everything squared is equal to, let me say that the value of c is 4, and now we take it to the right hand side. Maybe it's plus 4 and we take it to the right hand side, it becomes minus 4. Now assuming that everything is equal to minus 4, then plus, remember we'll add the square root of this to this side, okay, squared. Now what we are going to do, assuming that what you have in the right hand side is this, and now we have this in the left hand side. Now we find the square root of both sides. For us to do that, that is x plus 3 over 2 squared now is equal to, now whatever we have in the right hand side, we also find the square root of it. Now this one, square root of it. Now whatever we have in the right hand side, we find the square root of it again. In this case, assuming that we have this value, let's say minus 4 plus 3 over 2 squared. Now we find the square root of both sides. Now if we have the square root of a square is that value. For instance, if you have a squared, we find the square root of it will give us a. Or let me say 2 squared, we now look for the square root of it will give us 2. If we have 3 squared, and we find its square root, it will give us 3. If we have 4 squared, and we find its square root, it will give us 4. So whatever you have, if it has square, and we look for the square root of it will give us that value. So 5 squared, the square root of it will give us 5. Therefore, this is x plus 3 over 2 squared. And we're now looking for the square root of it. That means that this square will clear, everything will clear, leaving only x plus 3 over 2. So it becomes x plus 3 over 2. Now whatever is now in the right hand side, we find the value. Right hand side, we simplify this one and find the value. That is step 7. Now in step 8, we make x the subject of the formula. We make x, that is x, we make only x to stand alone, and we solve. Step 8. Step 8, make x the subject. Make x the subject. Make x the subject and solve. That is to make sure that only x is standing on this side, and then we solve. That means that anything that is attached to x, we move it to the other side of the equation, and then we complete the solving of the equation. That is the final step. Now example 1. Now assuming we have x squared plus 10x minus 4 is equal to 0, and we are asked to solve this quadratic equation using the completing the square method. Now this is how to solve it. Solution. Now step 1. Our step 1 is to compare with the standard equation for quadratic equations. Compare with ax squared plus bx. First of all, write it. Equation is x squared plus 10x minus 4 is equal to 0. Now when we compare with the standard equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Now from this we can see that anything standing on its own is stands by 1. So that means that the coefficient of x squared is 1. That means that a is 1. When we compare the two, then we get that a is equal to 1. This is x squared. This is 1 times x squared. Anything times by 1 will give you that same value. That is why we don't write 1 if the value is 1. That is if the coefficient is 1. So once you see the value without a coefficient, you will assume that the coefficient of it is 1. That means that the coefficient of x squared here is 1. Now from here, it means that a is 1. Now b is the one attached to x, the x without the power of 2, that is 10 here. So when we compare, we see that b is 10 and now c is minus 4. Now that is the first thing. So it is in line with the normal quadratic equation. Number 2, step 2. The step 2 is to make sure that the value of a is 1. Already we have compared and we have seen that the value of a is 1. So there's no need to divide anything again since the value of a is 1. Assuming that the value of a is not 1, we have to divide through by the value. But a is 1 here, so there is no need of dividing. Step 2, a is equal to 1, so no need for dividing. No need for dividing anything. Now step 3. The step 3 is to take the value of c to the right hand side. Now what is the value of c? Our c is minus 4. We move it to the right hand side. Now moving it to the right hand side, it is minus. If it is going to the other side, it will become plus. So we have step 3. It becomes x squared plus 10x is equal to 0 plus 4 minus 4. If you are taking it to the right hand side, it becomes plus 4. That is x squared plus 10x is equal to 4. 0 plus anything is that value. So 0 plus 4 is 4. This is step 4. Now step 5. Step 5. What we do in step 5 is to come to the value of b, take the b and divide it by 2. In our step 5, we take the value of b and divide it by 2. When we divide it by 2, we now find the square of it. Our b is 10. So we divide 10 by 2 and find the square of it. That is 10 over 2, which is equal to 5. Now we find the square of 5. The square of 5 is 5 squared. Square of 5 is equal to 5 squared. Now having gotten 5 squared, now we add this 5 squared to both sides. That is, we add it to the left hand side and to the left hand side. If we are adding it to the left hand side, we have to remove the original value of x. That is step 6. Step 6. Add the 5 squared to the left hand side and to the left hand side, right hand side and left hand side. Now remove the original value that contains b at the left hand side and add the squared of b. So we are going to have, for here, we have 10x. X squared plus 10x is equal to 4. So we remove the 10x and add the value of squared value of b, which is 5 squared. So we are now going to have, if we add it, that is x squared plus 10x plus 5 squared is equal to 4 is equal to 4 plus 5 squared. Now we remove this original value of the original value that contains b, so that what we are going to have is x squared plus 5 squared is equal to 4 plus 5 squared. When we add the 5 squared to both sides, now we remove this one that contains x, because it is from this that we got the 5 squared. It contains b, so we remove it and leave only the 5 squared. So we now have x squared plus 5 squared is equal to 4 squared is equal to 4 plus 5 squared. Now the next step is to factorize the left hand side. Step 7, factorize the left hand side to look so that everything will be into one common brackets. So we have this is this is x plus 5, everything raised to power 2. 5 plus x raised to power 2. We have square the power 2 here and power 2 here. So we take the two values, that is s and 5, and raise everything to power 2. So we have x plus 5, everything raised to power 2. Now equate it to the right hand side, which is 4 plus 5 squared. 4 plus 5 squared is 4 plus 25. 5 squared is 25. So this means that x plus 5 raised to power 2 is equal to 4 plus 5 is 29. And now we now have that now in step 8 we take the square root of both sides and solve. Take the square root of both sides. So we take the square root of this value and take the square root of this side. So we are going to have x plus x plus 5 x plus 5 squared. X plus 5 squared, now square root of it is equal to 29 square root of it. Now this is in the form of a squared square root of it. I said that the square root of any value squared is equal to that value. So this becomes x plus 5 is equal to root 29. X plus 5 is equal to root 29. Now we can solve further. Now the next step is to make sure that x stands alone. Step 5, step 4. Okay, this is step 4. Step 4. This is step 5. This is step 6. Step 6. And now this is step 7. Step 7. Now in our step 8 is to make x the subject of the formula. Step 8, which is the final step. Now we make x the subject of the formula. That is to make only x to stand alone. That means that you have to take any value attached to x to the other side. The value attached to x is plus 5, so we move it to the other side. It becomes minus. Now please note that if you want to move it to this side, this is square, this is square root. Don't move it in front of this value. Place it at the back of it. So what we are going to have is x is equal to minus 5. Square root of any value is plus or minus of that value. Square root of 3 is plus or minus square root of 3. Square root of 4 is plus or minus square root of 4. That is the value you get. Therefore, the square root of 29 is plus or minus square root of 29. This is what we are going to get. Assuming we have square root of 4 is anything that when you times it by 2, by itself, it will give you 4. Now 2 times 2 gives 4. Minus 2 times by minus 2 is equal to 4 again, because minus times minus is plus. Now this means that minus 2 times minus 2 will give us 4, and plus 2 times plus 2 will also give us 4. It simply means that the square root of a value is plus that value or minus that value. So that is why we're writing it as plus or minus square root of 29. So this is the value. Now, assuming we know the square root of 29, we can simplify further. But since we don't know it, or we cannot find it easily, we can leave it as this. So this becomes our final answer. If you have a calculator, we can find the square roots and simplify it further. So this is the final answer. Now, example 2. Now, if we are given a value like 4x squared plus x is equal to 3, and we are asked to factorize this, we are asked to solve this quadratic equation using completing the square method. Now, solution. Now what we do is to, in step 1, compare the equation with the standard equation for quadratic equation. We have it as 4x squared plus x is equal to 3. Now our standard equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Now here it simply means this is a, the value of a is 4, this is 1x. That means that the value of b is 1. Now here, this is equal to 3. It means that the value of c that is supposed to be here, this c that is supposed to be here, has been taken to the other side. So they have done the job for us. So it's still in order. Because if we move this 3 to this side, it becomes minus 3x is equal to 0. But they have done the job for us. So it is in line with the normal equation for quadratic equations. So we have compared and we have seen that it is in line with the standard equation for quadratic equations. Now step 2, we ensure that the value of a is 1. Here the value of a is 4. A is 4 in this equation. Therefore we divide through by 4. To divide through means to divide everything by 4. So we have 4 x squared over 4 plus x over 4 is equal to 3 over 4. Now this, if we divide it, it will give us, we divide this, we get x squared. Now plus x over 4 is equal to 3 over 4. Okay, now the next step, with this now, we now see that the value of x now, x squared, the coefficient of x squared is now 1. So the next step is now for us to take c to the right hand side. Take c to the right hand side. They have already taken the value of c to the right hand side, so we are not doing any job again in step 3. So it remains x squared plus x over 3, x over 4. It remains this same equation, x over 4 is equal to 3 over 4. We are not doing any job again because the c has been taken to the right hand side. Now number 4, step 4, we look for the value of b, divide it by 2 and square it. The value of b, we are now looking for it from this, not from the other side before we divide it. It is after dividing through that we now use the value of b we get, divide it by 2 and square it. We are using this value as b, not this one in this original equation, because from here we don't know the actual value of b because we have not divided by the value of a. It is now when we have divided by the value of a, when we make a the coefficient of x squared 1, that we know the actual value of b. So we have made it here and we got x over 4. X over 4 means that the value of b is 1 over 4. 1 over 4. Why? Because 1 over 4 times by x will give us x over 4. It means that this is 1 over 4 times by x. That is what will give us x over 4. So the value of b is 1 over 4. Now we take the 1 over 4, divide it by 2 and square it. Now that means 1 over 4 divided by 2. Let me do it in the other side. Let me do it here on this side. 1 over 4 divided by 2, that will give us 1 over 4 times by anything standing on its own is that value divided by 1. Now if we have two numbers dividing, two fractions separated by division, we can convert this division to multiplication by inverting this value. That means take the one that is under up and bring the one that is up down. So it becomes 1 over 4 times by, we are moving this one up because we are changing this division to multiplication. It becomes 1 over 2. So we are now going to have 1 times 1 is 1 over 4 times 2 is 8. So 1 over 4 divided by 2 will give us 1 over 8. Now we find the square of 1 over 8, which is equal to 1 over 8 square. 1 over 8 squared. 1 over 8 squared. 1 over 8 squared is actually 1 over, it is 1 over 64. 1 over 64. Okay, no, we just leave it like this. 1 over 8 squared. Let's leave it. This 1 over 8 squared, we add it to the left hand side and to the right hand side, to both sides. So we have, please, at this point, don't yet solve it. Just leave it as 1 over 8 squared. It is now when we have added it to the left hand side and to the right hand side that I can now simplify. So with this square, add it to the left hand side and to the right hand side. Make sure that it carries the square before you add to the left hand side and to the right hand side. Now that is step 6. Step 6. This is step 3. Step 3, step 4. We are supposed to have, in step 4, is this. Step 2 is this. Step 3, we find the value of b, okay, which is 1 over 4, and that is this. Then step 5, step 4, add the squared value of b to both sides. That means we come to this equation, add the squared value of b, that is 1 over 8 squared. We add it to this side and add it to this side. Step 4, step 5, step 5. Then it becomes x squared plus 3 plus x over 4 plus x over 4 plus 1 over 8 squared is equal to 3 over 4 plus 1 over 8 squared. We have added 1 over 8 squared to both sides. Now, this original value that has x, we remove it, so that we are now going to have x squared plus 1 over 8 squared is equal to 3 over 4 plus 1 over 8 squared. That is step 5. Now in step 6, we factorize the left hand side, making the two values to be in a common bracket. Step 6, factorize left hand side into a common bracket. Now what we do there is that we have the left hand side is x squared plus 1 over 8 squared. We have the same power for two of them, so we put two of them inside one bracket and use one and raise them to power 2. So it becomes x plus 1 over 8, everything raised to power 2, now is equal to what we have in the right hand side, which is 3 over 4 plus 1 over 8 squared. 3 over 4 plus 1 over 8, everything squared. Now we simplify the right hand side. We simplify it further so that we have the same value, plus 1 over 8 everything squared is equal to, this is equal to, now 1 over 8 squared, 1 over 8 everything squared is this 3 over 4, now plus 1 squared over 8 squared, and this gives us 3 over 4 plus 1 squared is 1, 8 squared is 64. So we have that x plus 1 over 8 squared is equal to, now the highest common factor between 4 and 64 is 64. We have 64. Now we simplify it to 64 divided by this, you have 48 plus 1. If you simplify this, we have this. So we are going to have this is equal to 49 over 64. 49 over 64. So this is 49. That is, the final thing there is x plus 1 over 8 squared is equal to 49 over 64. Now with this, we go to our final step, step 8. In step 8, we find the square root of both sides. Now square root of x plus 1 over 8 squared, square root of it is equal to 49 over 64, then square root of it. Now this is in the form of a squared square root of it. The square root of a squared, the square root of a value squared is equal to that same value. So this square root will cancel this power 2, leaving x plus 1 over 8. So we are going to have x, this is step 7, not step 8. Step 7, yeah. Step 7. In step 8, okay, we are still simplifying this. So we have x plus 1 over 8 is equal to square root of 49 over 64. That is square root of 49 over square root of 64. X plus 1 over 8 is equal to, square root of 49 is 7, and square root of 64 is 8. Now we are going to have, in the final step, we make x the subject of the formula. Make x the subject of the formula, that is, make x to stand alone. That is step 8. Now from here, making x to stand alone, we have Remember that this value is plus or minus. Square root of 49 is plus or minus 7, and square root of 8 is plus or minus 8. So we're actually having plus or minus 7 over 8. Now to make x the subject of the formula, we have that x, now this is plus here, 1 over 8. If it is moving to this side, it becomes minus. Now place it before this value that has plus and minus. So it becomes minus 1 over 8 plus or minus 7 over 8. 7 over 8. And so what we're going to have is that x is equal to minus 1 over 8 plus, we can take the first sign, that is plus, and then another one minus, plus 7 over 8, 7 over 8, and it is also, or minus 1 over 8, we take the second sign, which is minus, minus 7 over 8. So with this, we have that x is equal to LCM for this, the denominators is 8. So we have that if you solve this, we have 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 1 times by minus 1 will give us minus 1. Then 8 divided by 8 again is 1. 1 times by 7 will give us 7. And what is separating this and this is plus here. It becomes plus 7. Now, or the same 8 as a denominator, the LCM, then 8 divided by 8 is 1. 1 times by minus 1 is minus 1. Minus 1. Then 8 divided by 8 is 8. 8 times by 7. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 1 times by 7 is 7. And what is separating two of them here is minus. So minus 7. 8 divided by 8, 1. 1 times by 7 and 7 here. So we have that x is equal to minus 1 plus 7 is 6. 6 over 8, or minus 1 minus 7 is minus 8 over 8. Now that means that the final x is equal to, here we can divide 2 divide get 4, 2 divide, it will get, this is minus, okay, my plus, sorry, yeah, 2 divide, it will get 3. 2 divide 8, it will get 4. 2 divide 6, it will get 3. So x is equal to 3 over 4, or 8 minus 8 divided by 8 will give us minus 1. So the final value is 3 over 4 or minus 1. These are the values of x and the final answer. So this is how to solve quadratic equations using the completing the square method. First of all, you compare with the standard equation for quadratic equation, you make sure that the value of a is 1. If it is not 1, you divide through by the value of a. Then you move the value of c to the left hand side, to the right hand side, move c to the right hand side, and then take the value of b, divide it by 2, and find the square of it. When you have squared it, add to the left hand side and to the right hand side. Remove the original value, or the original value that contains b, and use the squared value of b to replace it at the left hand side. Now factorize the left hand side to be in a common bracket. Now you find the square roots of both sides and you find your final answer. So to find your final answer. And that is how to solve quadratic equation using the completing the square method.